So I've ranked a lot of create add-ons now, and because they're spread over 5 videos, people often ask me to cover add-ons that I've already done. I decided to put all the parts into one video, so now they're all in one place. If you're looking for a specific add-on, I've also included timestamps this time, and because I've ranked so many, the one you're looking for is probably there somewhere. Okay. Does anyone even play the create mod without this add-on? Like, in my mind, this is just basically vanilla create. Demonrails takes what is arguably the best part of the create mod, the trains, and makes it even better, somehow. Some of its features include differently sized tracks, more customization, this little guy, and a whole lot of decoration. I would say this mod kind of fills in some of the holes the create mod has regarding its trains. Just features that should definitely be in the base mod. In fact, so much so, I honestly couldn't tell you why the create mod developers haven't added these additions. In my opinion, one of the most underrated features of this mod is this thing. Having the ability to place down a train wherever you are is so useful when building large-scale railway systems, especially considering in Vanilla Create you have to build a whole damn train and it's just so annoying and convoluted. Because everything in Steam and Rails is either quality of life or decoration, there's no real reason not to include this add-on in your mod pack as it doesn't really affect gameplay that much. Oh, and not to mention the blocks included in Steam and Rails can be used for much more than just trains. I think the entire create mod community will unanimously agree that this is a great extension. S tier. So, if I'm being honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. Create Big Cannons unsurprisingly adds a bunch of cannons and different types of artillery to the create mod. Now, this mod is objectively very well made. There's so much customization in setting up cannons, and the way you load the artillery is so incredibly satisfying. But the thing is, I include this add-on every single time I start a new create mod playthrough, but I've never actually used it. Now, this might be because I have no friends, but also I think this mod is made for a very specific demographic. Now, even if I had friends, blowing their bases up with anti-aircraft armor-piercing artillery rounds would probably make them pretty angry. This mod is mainly made for people who like blowing things up in creative mode, or people who like blowing their friends up, probably also in creative mode, because these things aren't cheap. Once again, I don't think this add-on is badly made, in fact, far from it. I just think its use cases are pretty rare. It does get bonus points for pairing great with Clockwork though. C tier. Enchantment Industry adds an intuitive way to automate enchanting to the create mod. You can now give blaze burners these little enchanting guides and force them to enchant your tools for you. The only criticism I have for this add-on is that it's perhaps a little overpowered.
That's it? 97 millibuckets?
If you think villagers are strong, you're gonna have a field day with this one. This mod gives you the ability to print enchanted books, which essentially means duplicating them. So if you have a single mending book and like 4 drops of XP, well, your tools are never gonna break again. This, I guess, can be seen as a pro or a con. You could say it speeds up the early game so you're able to put more of your focus onto other create mod shenanigans, I don't know. Aside from automating enchanting, this add-on also offers hyper experience, which can be used to hyper enchant your tools. This essentially allows you to go beyond the enchantment cap. This is a good feature, this is a TIDS approved feature. I think the way this add-on does this is so balanced. It's annoying to get hyper XP, but it feels so rewarding when you've got efficiency 6 or unbreaking 4 on your tools. This also means in order to get the new god tools, you're forced to engage with this mod, and it makes you work for it. A tier. Okay, to be completely honest, I can't 100% properly speak on this add-on. I think the main purpose of a mod like Crafts and Additions is to bridge the gap between Create Mod and other mods like Immersive Engineering, so my take might be a little skewed because I don't play with these mods ever. With that being said, this mod adds the ability to convert stress into electricity and vice versa. And outside of just being used for other mods that require electricity, this add-on still has some pretty good use cases. There are many benefits to converting your stress into electricity. I've actually already explained this in one of my survival episodes. Electricity has 2 major advantages over SU. Firstly, it's very easily transportable, but most importantly, it can be accumulated, stored in a block, ready to be discharged for later use. Now this is important because the vanilla create mod doesn't actually allow you to do this, and as an added bonus, the wires look pretty cool. This mod isn't crazy or anything, but it definitely comes in handy a few times in my survival playthroughs. B tier. New Age is another electricity mod. It does add some other features which I'll get into in a second. The problem with this mod is that the way you generate electricity is way less convenient and more expensive than Crafts and Additions. Though it does let you generate additional stress using motors, which is pretty cool, I would say the main selling point of this mod over Crafts and Additions is nuclear power. You're able to make these boiler heaters using nuclear fuel made up of a new ore called thorium found in your world, and these heaters essentially act as super blaze burners. To be completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. I always thought the nuclear power seemed a bit underwhelming. I mean, it's a lot of work for not that much of a payout because you can just do the same thing with a blaze burner anyway. I think it would have been really cool to see a feature only accessible through nuclear power. I also personally don't really like some of the textures in this mod. I think it sometimes doesn't really fit with the create mod aesthetic. C tier. With the introduction of copycat blocks in the vanilla create mod, people naturally wanted more. That's where this mod comes in. Create Copycats Plus basically lets you turn any block into any shape. This mod makes building more interesting, but I can see why people would dislike it, as it adds non-vanilla looking shapes to the game. But personally, I like how it gives you more creative potential. I've used these slopes in a number of my builds. A popular use for this add-on that I always see is people using it to make their trains look more spacious, as these panels can be placed as the walls, giving the illusion that it's only 3 blocks wide. There's not much to say about this add-on. I personally find it really useful, but I can't really justify ranking it too high as it objectively doesn't really add that much. B tier. Now, ever since I was like 10, I've always been fascinated with mods that allow you to move your own builds. This started with the Zeppelin mod like over 10 years ago. Side note, it's crazy that a mod like this existed almost 14 years ago? Has it been that long? Every few years or so, a new mod of this nature would come out. I remember the Archimedes ships mod, and everything else was kind of not really retained by my brain. Anyway, you can imagine how excited I was to hear about Create Aeronautics and Valkyrian Sky's Clockwork. Unfortunately, only Clockwork has been released, so that's all we have to work off of. Clockwork allows the player to build physics objects and then move them using Create contraptions. It is mainly used to build planes and boats where the sky's the limit. Literally. It's integrated pretty well into Create, all of the features are in line with the base mod, and I like the added challenge of powering the contraption with stress. This means you have to balance aesthetics with some kind of engine, unless you're messing around in creative. The physics also feels great. The devs have stated that they attempted to find a middle ground where the physics feel kind of realistic, but not too much so, where anything you build will nosedive straight into the ground because you're not an aerospace engineer, and I think they did a pretty good job. Designing your plane is a good challenge, but with trial and error, it's not too hard to make something that flies. Or you can copy a design off the internet. This mod is an easy S tier. Except for the fact that it's literally unplayable at times due to how unpolished it is. Oh, I hate having to bump this mod down because it's conceptually so cool, but I swear to God, sometimes it feels like this mod breaks more than it works. It's really frustrating too because the plane you've just spent so much time on will suddenly just disappear off the face of the earth and you won't be able to do anything about it. I made a plane in my survival series a few months back, and the reason it hasn't appeared in any of the following episodes is because off camera a creeper exploded near it and the blast force sent the thing into orbit. Like, I'm not even joking, I wish I had footage of this. Both seem to work though, so at least it has that going for it. Even with that, this mod is still great, and with a bit of polishing, I can see this becoming one of the best Create mod add-ons for sure. I guess we'll just have to wait for Create Aeronautics though. A tier. Okay, Create Broken Bad gives you the ability to make a questionable substance in a process which seems incredibly realistic. I mean, I wouldn't know. Seriously, even downloading this mod makes me feel like I'm on some kind of watch list. The process is long and complicated, so if you're into that, I guess give this one a go. When you've acquired the goods, you're able to sell it to villagers for emeralds, and that's about it. Okay, not to be the mayor of Frowntown or anything, but aside from being kind of funny, this add-on is basically pointless. I mean, after like 20 steps, you get like 3 emeralds. And yes, you're gonna say you're missing the point of this add-on, and yeah, maybe, but you also can't really refute the fact that this mod kind of adds nothing. I mean, like, are you seriously gonna do all this in survival? D tier. Dreams and Desires adds a bunch of things. A few of my favorites are these mechanisms that give you an alternate crafting recipe to a whole bunch of blocks, which makes automation easier and faster. These sails you can use for your in-case fans because using liquids is really annoying, and the OG flyable engine. This add-on also adds a bunch of decoration, which is always nice to have. Admittedly, a lot of it isn't very Create mod-esque, which is more of a personal preference. Another main feature is the Infa series. Through a long process, you're able to make infinite versions of certain blocks. These blocks basically act like you're in creative. Now, I was originally going to rank this mod lower on the tier list, but when I had a proper play around with it, I actually realized I use this mod so much more than I initially thought. This add-on just adds so many random items, chances are you're gonna find a use for at least one of them. My main criticism is at times it doesn't really fit the theme of the create mod, and also I'm not the biggest fan of the info blocks. I kind of feel like they just purposely made the process incredibly complicated and hard, and all the effort you spent making this block could just have gone towards a factory which basically produces an infinite amount of said block anyway. It does get bonus points for including the shimmer from Terraria though. BTL. Create Connected is a controversial add-on. If you've ever been frustrated about not having a 6-way gearbox or that regular gearboxes invert the rotation on their sides, this mod is for you. It allows you to make your contraptions a lot more compact by adding a lot of quality of life blocks. Now, this add-on is controversial because it arguably takes some of the fun out of the Create mod. Some people say that having to work around the limitations of the blocks that the Create mod provides is part of the challenge, and having something like a 6-way gearbox makes designing factories too easy, which is definitely a valid point. In my opinion though, or to me at least, the Create mod is about pushing Minecraft automation to its limits and designing creative and cool contraptions. In my mind, this add-on kind of helps with that, and I like having things to be convenient because it means I can focus more on the creative side rather than the logic side of my builds. So personally, I think this is a great addition. I don't want to rank it too high because it doesn't add that much, and it doesn't really alter the gameplay either, but it's still for sure very solid. BTL. This mod, along with the Factory Must Grow, were by far the most requested from the last episode. Create Estrogen unsurprisingly adds estrogen, along with a bunch of other random stuff. This mod is so unserious. Initially, this mod was gonna go straight into the D tier, but I'm not gonna lie, after playing around with it a bit, it's kind of grown on me. Most of the other Create mod add-ons are so complex, and it's actually kind of nice having one that doesn't take itself as seriously. And despite 90% of its features being basically useless, it does actually add some gameplay altering stuff. The stockings are pretty cool. I like how they negate fall damage because it gives you a genuine reason to engage with this mod, and on top of that, you can express your identity, which is pretty neat. Look, this mod isn't anything crazy, but I did genuinely enjoy messing around with it. It was fun, and because that's literally the entire point of playing Minecraft, I'm probably gonna put it higher than it should be. BTR. I got many strong-worded comments on the first video about not including this add-on. The Factory Must Grow above all adds oil and electricity to the Create mod. The main purpose of TFMG, in my opinion, is to fill one of the holes in the Create mod. And we're going to talk about the oil part first, because I already kind of went through the pros and cons of electricity in the first episode, not that I don't have anything to say about it. By adding oil, you're essentially able to have a transportable source of stress, and yes, while you can do this with electricity technically, it is a lot easier with a liquid as you can move this stuff freely around your world via trains and other contraptions. This also works really well in conjunction with the Valkyrian Skies mods because it gives you a compact way of producing a lot of stress, which is perfect for boats and planes. The way you extract the oil and separate it into its constituents is also pretty cool. Crude oil, which is the stuff you get from your pump jacks, is then separated into 6 different fuels, which each have their own properties. You can then store these fuels in fluid tanks and use them accordingly, which can come in pretty handy, as with the alternative endgame power generation method being steam engines, you have to discharge SU straight away, otherwise you're burning fuel for no reason. With the engines from this add-on, you have more control over when you actually want to use your fuel. I can see this being very useful on a server to prevent lag. Distributing oil across the server means not everyone has to generate their own SU. Now, let's talk about the electricity part of this mod. In my opinion, the electricity in this add-on is somehow better than both New Age and Crafts and Additions. To me, it feels like they retained the best parts of both mods and added more. TFMG adds voltage. If you try to power something with too high of a voltage, it will explode. To counteract this, you now need to incorporate resistors or transformers into your electricity builds, which makes building with this mod just that much more immersive. If you like the storing energy aspect of New Age, you can also do that with this mod, using the accumulator and capacitor. Oh, and it adds 2 new potato guns and a flamethrower. Yeah, this mod is dope. S tier. I absolutely can't believe I forgot this add-on in the first episode. Create Trackwork is basically the ground-based vehicle equivalent of Create Clockwork, and it kinda suffers from the same problems. This mod has come a long way, but I would still say it's maybe not as polished as Clockwork. Not that Clockwork is polished by any means. Some aspects just feel a little unfinished right now. With that being said, however, there are definitely a lot of features that this mod has over Clockwork. Firstly, it is so much more accessible. Now, it just kind of inherently has to be because you're working with cars and tanks and not planes, and you don't really have to worry about lift and shit. But even so, making your car do simple operations like turning is really intuitive, which I really appreciate because they could have easily made it really complicated and annoying, and then argued that it was for realism's sake. I'm curious to see where they take this mod in the future, and when this, along with Clockwork, are a little more polished, it'll be really cool to use them in combination, because right now taxiing your planes is really awkward. Also, unrelated note, we should definitely get a water-related Valkyrian Skies add-on to complete the trio. This mod is good. Once again, for its creative potential alone, it definitely deserves a place in the higher tiers. However, like I said before, this add-on sadly has the same problems as Clockwork, as in its current state, it's a little too buggy and unpolished to be at the top. A tier. Create Railway's Navigator is a great addition. Above all, it adds these new display panels that you can use on your stations or trains that display real-time information about where your trains are at and going. The vanilla Create display boards are great, but trust me, if you've never played with this edition, you'll be surprised at how much information can fit into one of these boards. This mod adds so little, but it makes your world just feel so much more alive. And additionally, it also adds a phone, which you can use to schedule your train journeys. The coolest thing about this item is that it works like a real train navigator app, in the sense that it also tracks transfers. And if you're playing on a server with a lot of trains, this mod is definitely a must-have. Even if you're playing by yourself, this mod is just fun to have. You will definitely spend more time than you think looking at the display boards. A tier. Create Numismatics is a multiplayer add-on that attempts to streamline the economy. Usually in a survival server, you'd opt for something like diamonds, but I guess when you're playing with something like the Create mod where chances are you're probably going to be automating diamonds, this doesn't really work. This add-on adds vendor blocks, bank accounts, and many more finance-related things. Having a block that acts as a shop is super useful because now you don't have to worry about setting up a complicated redstone system or people robbing you, but I guess we kind of have that now from Create 0.6 too. The biggest problem with this mod is that you have to manually distribute the currency. And yes, I'm aware that if you were able to craft it, people would just make crazy factories and monkey have 2 banana worth less and all that. But with that being said, I think there's just a few fundamental problems with this mod. The only place I see it working is on some kind of large-scale server. Like, I'm talking hundreds of people, because using this on a server with the homies probably won't work out that well. Like, you'd maybe have to manually give each player a certain amount at the start, but then you'd have to constantly keep an eye out and moderate the economy when it goes wrong, before probably just resorting to another form of currency anyway. Look, I've never played on a server with this mod, so realistically I wouldn't know. I just don't think it would work that well. C tier. Create Destroy is a chemistry-based extension, and it brings so much content. Honestly, I wasn't even aware that this add-on existed before reading your comments in the last video, and after playing around and familiarizing myself with it, I have a lot to say. First of all, this add-on is really cool. There's so much attention to detail in this mod, to the point where if you've ever taken a chemistry class in your life, this add-on will probably induce some trauma. With that being said, it is very fun to mess around with mixing chemicals, and when you finally complete a recipe, it's incredibly satisfying. Obviously, chemical synthesis is simplified a bit, but I mean, it's still pretty hard. This leads me to my second point. This mod is so complicated. Usually when Create mod add-ons are made, the developer finds a middle ground between realism and simplicity. Take Create Clockwork for an example. If it was too realistic, then no one in the community would be able to design a plane. This mod definitely leans more into the realism side, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it just means it's not very beginner friendly. You're definitely gonna need some kind of tutorial to play this one, but hey, if you like having the learning curve, then it's not really a problem. My only real issue with this add-on is that while it adds a lot of content, it doesn't really add that much content. From what I've seen, most of the molecules don't really have a purpose yet, and while there are a few things that I could see being useful in a playthrough, I just don't think they're worth the hassle. This mod is still in early development, so obviously more content is going to be added, which is exciting because I genuinely think this mod already has the background it needs to be an absolute must-have in Create mod packs. Once more content is introduced that's a little more synonymous with vanilla Create, there's so much potential for this to be a great add-on, but currently as it stands, you can't really do much with it right now. B tier. Although if you're into chemistry, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. This add-on is so underrated. Create Northstar adds space travel to Create. Now, this isn't a new concept to modded Minecraft or anything. Collector has been around for, well, basically forever at this point. But it's just cool to see a feature like this integrated into the Create mod. Obviously, being able to design your own rockets is a lot more fun and rewarding than just placing an item down. I also like how you're able to walk around your rocket in space. This is such a small detail, but I think it makes the whole thing feel so much more immersive, as you're not just sitting through an animation. This mod looks incredibly daunting at first. There are so many different items that you have to think about, but I actually think it's pretty intuitive. It kind of holds your hand through a lot of the rocket creating process, which is nice. It does, however, lack a ponder feature, which definitely would have been helpful, but it's not the end of the world. All the planets have their own respective ores and mobs, which I also think is a cool detail because it means that they're not all copy and paste. This is nice because it actually encourages you to visit them. Personally, I think this mod is insane, and I'm surprised it's not talked about that much. I feel like this one kind of flew under the radar for a lot of mod packs. Maybe it's because space travel feels a little out of place for Minecraft? I don't know. Not gonna lie, this mod kind of hits the right spot for me. There's something about the idea of building your own rocket and then using it to explore different planets that's just so cool to me. And the greatest part is that the recipes in this mod actually feel well thought out. They're not crazy expensive or particularly annoying either. It's also in a much more polished state than other mods like Clockwork and Trackwork. So for that, I'm actually gonna give this one an S tier. There are so many chunk loading mods in the Create mod add-on world. I just thought this time around I'd include one because I think everyone plays with at least one of them installed. Create power loading adds a chunk loader to the game. That's kind of it. This specific mod is special though because I think it integrates the block much better than some other mods. What I also like about this specific mod is that you can put it on a train station, and when a train arrives at a given station, the chunks will load. This is a great addition because obviously portable storages and fluid interfaces don't work in unloaded chunks, and this is kind of the only downside to trains. However, installing a mod like this is kind of a double-edged sword. The more you have, the laggier your world is gonna be. It might sound like a good idea putting one of these in your factory district, until you actually do it. I would say the position this mod is placed on the tier list is directly proportional to how good your PC is. With that being said, I always have this mod installed and don't really end up using it that much. You can definitely survive without a chunk loader. C tier. Vanilla food can get pretty boring, so it's nice to have alternatives. What I like about this specific add-on is that it really goes above and beyond and adds so much food. This mod is a double add-on for the Create mod and Farmer's Delight, and acts as a great intersection between the two. Since the Create mod is almost always played with Farmer's Delight, having a mod that's specifically designed with the items and mechanics from both mods in mind is great. My favorite thing about this mod is that it's just so satisfying. You would think making different foods with these insane crafting trees would feel tedious, but it's really not. All the recipes are fun to craft manually or to automate. Once this mod is updated to Create 0.6, I can see people making some absolute crazy food factories with the new factory gorges. It's also worth mentioning that some of the food items give potion effects, which is nice, but in my opinion it's not really the main point of this add-on. Above all, it just gives you options and makes what is usually quite a mundane part of Minecraft a lot more fun. A tier. No, this isn't crafts and additions, although the two add-ons are actually quite similar. Create stuff and additions adds a bunch of stuff and additions. In my opinion, there are 6 major standout features and everything else is just kind of mid. To start, this add-on adds a set of tools and armor for most of the Create mod ores. These, in my opinion, only exist because they can. At the point of progression where you gain access to each respective tier, you probably want to be saving your materials for your contraptions. And when you're at the point where these ores are being automated, you're much better off opting for something like diamond or netherite. The only set worth considering here are the experience tools, which mine only slightly slower than diamond and offer the pretty cool benefit of emitting XP every now and then, which, if combined with mending, basically means you never have to worry about your tool breaking. Now, the selling point of this add-on comes from these 6 features: the jetpack, flamethrower, portable drill, grappler, block picker, and drones. The jetpack is okay. It's designed mainly for movement over building, which I personally think is more of a con when comparing it with the jetpack from the standalone jetpack mod, I think it kind of feels inferior. I think if a jetpack is added to Minecraft, its primary focus should be for building, not transport, as Elytra already covers that field. And if you want to make the argument that the Elytra is too broken and the create mod should be played without it, then adding this jetpack doesn't really fix your problem either. This jetpack is hard to control precisely and also has a height limit, which makes it pretty frustrating to build with. The flamethrower is okay. It does AoE damage, which is pretty useful, but it's nothing really too special or original. The portable drill is good. There's nothing really like it in the vanilla game or vanilla create, so it fills a good niche. And it also uses charge as opposed to durability, which means it will never actually break. Mining a 3x3 area is incredibly useful for mining or terraforming. The grappler is, in my opinion, probably the best thing this mod has to offer, purely because it's so fun. When you combine this with the slime boots, which are also included in this mod, traveling around your world becomes so enjoyable. I mean, I'll just let the footage speak for itself. The block picker is kind of like a gravity gun. Ironically, I think the best use case for this item is transporting mobs. It is a little buggy though. And finally, drones. Drones are conceptually very cool, and while they do have some good uses, they're pretty finicky and hard to use consistently. They're also good for transporting mobs. Oh, and you can use the magnet on yourself. Kind of. BTR. Adding structures that contain create mod items is a cool idea, especially considering that they don't exist in vanilla create. But with that being said, I definitely do have some major problems with this mod. Firstly, the structures feel incredibly imbalanced. I mean, this one has a beacon. Also, I think the main purpose of these structures aren't for looking nice, they're for giving the player create mod items, which I personally am not the biggest fan of. And you'll see what I mean through the background footage, but many of these structures contain piles of certain create mod blocks, and that's annoying because some of these structures are genuinely really cool. I'm a big fan of this crane. I think it's a great example of a structure that provides the player with materials, but actually integrating them into the build rather than whatever this is. Same thing with this ruin. I also like these two ships. Although they're also kind of imbalanced, they're rare enough for it to not feel too overpowered. And they also compensate by being really cool and big. Kind of like a woodland mansion. Some of my least favorites, however, are this floating thing with a beacon, this tank, I mean, what even is this? And finally, you can just find a complete underground create mod base. Like, what? On top of this, I don't think there are any functional create mod contraptions in any of the structures, which feel like a completely wasted opportunity. Like, we could have had some crazy traps or interactive puzzles or something. Oh, also, sometimes the structures generate really unnaturally. C tier. Okay, so after some revision, I think I'm actually going to put this in the D tier. While recording the footage for the other mods, I realized that these structures are actually really common, and while some of them are cool, they kind of end up just flooding your world. The items in this mod are actually a collection of components ported over from Create Destroy, an add-on which I covered in my last ranking video. Functionally, it's very similar to something like Create Connected. It essentially adds a handful of quality of life blocks that can be used to simplify the transportation of stress. The difference is the stuff that this mod adds covers really niche problems. Like, for example, the differential cog adds and subtracts the rotation of the two feeding shafts, which, I mean, isn't exactly the most applicable. The upside to this mod, though, is that it looks really cool. Especially the colossal cogwheel. I mean, this thing just makes your factories look so much more eye-grabbing. I really appreciate the addition of the double cardan shaft. Switching directions when transferring stress is usually a pain, since the easiest way is to use a gearbox. With the addition of this component, you're able to have so much more control over which way your stress is going. The most actually useful items in this mod are these two tube things. They're used to freely transport stress and items, which you might think is broken, and I did too until I actually tried and realized that they have so many placement restrictions, so you can't just connect any point with any other point. You still have to kind of plan your build. I like this mod. Not a must-have, but it definitely spices up your playthrough. B tier. Custom weapons have been around in modern Minecraft basically since the very beginning. Throughout the years, many mods have tried to integrate guns into the game. Love and War attempts to do that using the Create mod as a middleman, and it's okay. Guns are crafted using these molds and parts, which I actually think is a really good and easy way to handle crafting when you have a mod that adds so many types of one item, so good job on that one. The guns are fine, they don't feel that great, but they're not horrible. The recoil is really odd. As somebody who used to play a lot of CS and Valorant, it's quite weird to see the bullets land under the crosshair, but that's kind of just personal preference. There's also a bit of customization with the included attachments, nothing crazy, but it's nice to see. A really annoying feature in this mod is that the empty bullet casings will fly out the side of your firearm after shooting around, which, I mean, I get it's supposed to be realistic, but like, it's so annoying. Look, the bottom line is this mod is fine, but I don't really see a world where you'd use this over other more polished gun mods. You could argue it's worth it for the create mod recipes, but like, you're not gonna be automating guns anyway, so what's even the point? The only feature saving this mod a little is this little guy, the robot dog, who once upgraded follows you around and acts as storage and shoots enemies for you. C tier. In the last video I reviewed Create Northstar, a mod that lets you travel to space, and many of you suggested Above and Beyond. Guys, this is a mod pack, but on the topic of space travel, a few of you also suggested. While I'm aware this isn't technically a create mod add-on, it's an add-on for Valkyrian Skies, I did get suggestions to cover this one and it looked really cool. Plus, Valkyrian Skies is almost always played with the create mod anyway. In fact, when I first booted this mod up, I actually installed it without the create mod, but immediately realized that was a horrible idea. You really need link controllers for a mod like this to function correctly. Now, ranking this mod was actually fairly difficult because it's technically a compatibility add-on for Valkyrian Skies and a mod called Cosmic Horizon. Most of everything you're seeing on screen is from Cosmic Horizons, not Starlance. And because of that, I can't really say Starlance is good because of its stunning visuals or planet generation. That being said though, I still think this is a really great mod with a few caveats. To start positive, when I was ranking Northstar, I said there was something special about building your own rocket and taking it to space. That absolutely applies here. Except Starlance gives you even more customization, allowing you to actually manually control your spaceship instead of just watching an animation play. Additionally, the mod is very simple to use. Thrusters are powered simply with redstone, which could be a placeholder. I definitely see this mod adding fuel in the future, but as it currently stands, it's very easy to experiment with. Unfortunately, this mod suffers the same fate as literally any other Valkyrian Skies add-on. It's in very, very early development and is quite incomplete. The mod can be buggy at times and feel a little clunky. There are also currently no recipes for any of the items this mod adds, so it's not very survival compatible. Also, this is me kind of being nitpicky, but I also don't like how the threshold for reaching space is only y equals 560. I feel like that's kind of too low. I will say though, even if you're not into space mods, the blocks from Starlance are also compatible with Eureka, Clockwork, Trackwork, and every other Valkyrian Skies add-on, which is nice if you're just looking for a simple to use thruster for your physics object. I really hope development for this mod continues because I'd love to see where they can take this add-on, but for now, it's gonna sit comfortably in the B tier. Create Design and Decor is, in my opinion, the best decoration add-on out there. What really separates this one from the others is the fact that it's incredibly polished. I've never been that into deco mods, but I have to say, after playing around with the items, it definitely made me want to add it to my mod pack. My favorite thing about this mod has got to be its simplicity. It doesn't add a bunch of custom crafting materials and overcomplicate its recipes. Everything in this mod is created using only materials from Vanilla Create. I also like how it adds some functional blocks. I really like the look of these custom crushing wheels, and the new metal cogs look clean. I know you can achieve something similar with Copycats Plus, but this one feels nicer as it actually has a custom model. It also adds these colored metal blocks which have a really nice washed out texture. In fact, this mod adds plenty of colored blocks, which is great for texturing and detailing. I think this mod is a great way to add more detail into your world without requiring that much more effort, and everything is fairly easily obtainable, apart from these funky chains. They don't have a recipe for some reason. Anyway, great mod, amazing if you like building. A tier. While the Create mod gives you the ability to automate most items and mechanics in Minecraft, it does end up missing a few, and that's more or less what this add-on covers. With vintage improvements, you're now able to automate processes like leaf harvesting, smithing, glass panes, and more. It also adds a handful of its own recipes like uncrafting with the centrifuge and gives you more options for create items like auto sanding. This one's especially interesting because it requires a low RPM, which isn't really something I've seen before. Just pointing it out. This mod is pretty cool, but currently I feel like some of the blocks don't do that much. For example, the laser cutter is only used to make glass panes, and most of the other blocks also fall victim to something like this. I think this mod would actually be great for some cross add-on compatibility. Like, for example, provide alternate crafting recipes for items in bigger add-ons like Steam and Rails or TFMG or something like that. This way the blocks would have more than just a few functions and would incentivize actually using them. Currently as it stands, I think this mod isn't really that important to your playthrough, as setting up these machines can be quite the hassle when they don't really do that much. I do really like the sander and the centrifuge though. C tier. Cobblestone generators can be incredibly laggy, which is kinda a big problem because Cobblestone just so happens to be really useful in Create. That's where this add-on steps in. Now, I don't have that much to say about this add-on, it's pretty straightforward. It basically just replaces your generators with a singular block, which is directly powered with stress. When I was first messing around with this add-on, I thought the generator block was a little too overpowered and I was going to put it straight into the D tier, but then I realized this mod literally gives you full customization over every stat, so you can perfectly adjust its strength to what feels balanced to you. Then I also realized that if you installed this mod, it's probably because you don't have a $5,000 PC and want to play modded Minecraft without your game on life support. It essentially takes a feature that's already in the game and simplifies it, making it more accessible for people with less powerful computers. And for that, I guess I can't really hate on this mod that much. Like, if you don't like it, just don't install it. You're not missing any features by playing without it like you might be with other add-ons. B tier. Create Radars does about exactly what you'd expect a mod called Create Radars to do. It adds radars. They're a multi-block structure that looks something like this and are used to scan mobs, players, contraption, projectiles, and the coolest one, Valkyrian Sky's ships. That's right, this mod is compatible with other Create mod add-ons. More on this in a second. The radars are quite intuitive and simple. They're easy to craft, which is a big win. My one complaint is that you're not able to filter between passive and hostile mob, because otherwise I think this thing would be incredibly useful for spawn-proofing nearby caves to increase mob bomb efficiency. If you're into Create PvP, this add-on is, dare I say, essential for one reason. That it's compatible with Create Big Cannons, giving you the ability to auto-aim multiple cannons, which is an incredibly cool feature considering we don't usually get cross add-on content like this. Now, PvP add-ons in my opinion are still quite niche because there's not that much demand for them. That being said though, I do genuinely believe this mod has more use cases than Create Big Cannons. B tier. Honestly, I wasn't originally going to rank this one, not because it's bad or anything, but just because its main purpose is to add food and there's about a million other add-ons that do the same thing. But after reading your comments, I was shocked to see this one actually suggested quite a bit. Not gonna lie, I thought I was like the only person on earth to play with this mod installed, but I guess not. Bitterballen adds a bunch of deep fried foods to your game. It stands out a little more amongst the bajillion other food add-ons purely because it adds this thing. Yes, you actually have to deep fry your food other than just putting it into a furnace or a crafting table. This adds an extra layer to the mod, which makes it a little more fun, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't really add that much. In my last video, I ranked a mod called Create Food, which in my opinion is probably sufficient for Create Food related content. Unless you're really into deep fried food, this mod isn't anything too special. C tier. This is such an underrated add-on. Create Ratatouille adds a bunch of new ways to automate cooking and agriculture to the Create mod. In vanilla Create, the most we get is bulk smoking and auto harvesting. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a huge improvement from vanilla Minecraft, but once you get used to the pacing of Create, the auto cooking can sometimes feel kind of slow. Create Ratatouille adds, in my opinion, two main features, and then a bunch of other stuff that is used either to obtain the required materials for said features or are used in conjunction. The first of these two is the spreader. The spreader is a tool that allows you to both automate plant fertilization and animal breeding. It uses ripened matter and mature matter respectively, which are definitely not cheap, so this is geared more towards the late game, as if you're going to be utilizing these items, you're probably going to need to automate these things. Once you've successfully set up the spreader, you're going to naturally have a surplus of food. that's where the oven comes in. This thing is a multi-block structure that acts similar to the steam engine. It requires blaze burners and these oven fans to operate, and you need to find the balance between size, air, and heat. Once you have it up and going, it will cook food at insane speeds to keep up with your new spreader setup. This add-on, in my opinion, is great. I actually haven't seen a create add-on that hyper-focuses on the cultivation and cooking aspects in the way this mod does. It's great because it absolutely blows the roof off of the automation cap that was previously there. Like, I know you could have a crazy bone mill setup and use deployers, but that feels really unintuitive and not fun. This mod kind of brings the farming part of the create mod up to speed with the rest of the mod. Now you're basically able to produce food as fast as you want without having to worry about massive farms lacking your game. A tier. This might be my favorite create gun mod. Create Gunsmithing adds 9 new weapons to the create mod that each have their own purpose. What I like about this mod is that it really leans into the create mod steampunk feel. The guns it adds all follow the create mod aesthetic, and it makes the mod a lot more in place over other gun mods. When I first booted up this mod, I thought 9 guns was kind of little, however I soon realized that this is kind of all you really need. Plus, this mod actually has a really smart way of getting around this issue, which I'll get into in a few minutes. Each of the 9 weapons serve a unique purpose, and there's not really any double ups. The crafting recipes are fun and balanced, the ammo casings don't fly out of your inventory when you use them. Thank God. The cool part of this mod though is the fact that each gun has a lot of customization. There are attachments that are specialized for each weapon, and they don't just simply change the magazine size or reduce recoil or whatever. They actually fundamentally modify the gun. By doing this, this mod creates a really intuitive system where you only really need to craft a few ammo types and you get access to what feels like a bunch of different weapons. You can turn your revolver into this, which feels completely different to use. This mod really shines in the fact that it's balanced really well with the create mod and the models fit in. A lot of other gun mods will just kind of stick to the original gun models, which feel really out of place for a cozy game like Minecraft. I feel like Create Gunsmithing finds a really good balance where the guns still feel great and are fun to use, but don't really ruin the visuals of the game too much. A tier. So this one isn't really my favorite. Judging by the add-ons that I rank, you can probably tell that I'm not the biggest fan of the militaristic ones, so naturally I'm already gonna have a bias against this one. However, even considering that, I still firmly believe that this add-on is not that good. Firstly, it's kind of messy, like the add-on doesn't really have that much consistency. It places a major emphasis on the supercomputer in the sense that it's a really complicated crafting tree, but because this add-on isn't that popular, I have no idea what this thing does. I literally searched the internet for so long and I couldn't find a single mention of this thing, so if it does something insanely cool and unique, then I guess grill me in the comments for missing it. The main thing this mod adds, in my opinion, is decoration. It's got a few blocks that look alright, but honestly, the style isn't my favorite either. It does add some explosive devices and structures, but in my opinion, these are also kind of misses. The structures feel pretty uninteresting and out of place. I had the ones in the nether spawn exclusively on the roof, and I'm not sure if this is an intended feature or not, because it also adds these brittle bedrock blocks that you can mine through, which honestly is kind of like the only feature of this mod that I don't dislike. But even that's kind of a controversial opinion. Not to mention, this mod also adds like a million new ores that don't really do anything, so they kind of just clog up your world. It is currently still in development, but in my opinion, in its current state, this add-on doesn't really add anything that's that interesting to me. I mean, if you like the military aesthetic, you could definitely utilize some other building blocks, but personally, it's a skip for me. D tier. I always thought the casing blocks in the create mod looked pretty good and should definitely be used in building more, so I was pretty happy to find out that this mod exists. Create Extra Casings exclusively adds color variants to the 3 casings that are already in the create mod. There's not really that much to say about this mod. The casings are good, I like the color they picked for each one, they're a bit more washed out, which makes them blend in with the surroundings more. And they retain all previous functions, like for example, you can still put the copper casing around pipes and the andesite and brass ones around shafts and belts. In my opinion, I think they're mainly used as highlights for your builds, and seriously help when the create mod contraptions just kind of look out of place for your color palette. This isn't an amazing mod by all means, but it definitely doesn't hurt to include in your playthroughs. B tier. Create quality of life is not really what I expected. From the name, I initially thought it was going to add a bunch of small features that kind of alter the gameplay. Things like new recipes and small items, because that's usually what quality of life refers to. Instead though, it mainly focuses on pushing the progression of the Create mod. It adds a new god set of armor and tools that give really useful perks. Now, it also does include some other stuff which is more in line with the quality of life theme. Things like this trash can, this ender packager, and the craziest one, the inventory linker. I thought this thing would be kinda like the stock link in some way for some reason, but no, it literally just pulls items straight out of your inventory. I have no idea what you would use this for. Getting back to the main purpose of this mod though, the new armor set is not really my thing. I think capping out at netherite is good enough for the Create mod, and going above and beyond feels kind of too overpowered, at least for the way I play. I think this mod would fit really well into a more adventure/exploration focused mod pack. When I play the Create mod, I like to focus on building projects, which isn't really the point of this mod. I will say though, as much as I do say it's overpowered, it's also balanced out by being incredibly hard to obtain. Like, each piece of armor, each tool is so expensive. The perks I mentioned earlier include potion effects and a dash for the armor, and quality of life additions for the tools. Oh, that's why it's called Create Quality of Life. C tier. Create Fishery Industry adds a bunch of fishing items to the game. So it says. Okay, I mean, technically it does, but I think these items have much better purposes. The way this add-on works is actually pretty cool. It adds these trap blocks that basically kill and loot passive fish and small passive mobs when they get close. This is all well and good, but the developers chose to also make these traps pick up items, which makes item sorting and transport a lot easier because now you can just have everything spew out onto the floor and have these traps pick them up. You can also make nozzle versions of these traps, which makes them even stronger. Realistically, using these things to fish is probably not gonna be the most efficient because it relies too much on random chance. Where I see this feature shining is using it, for example, in a chicken farm. This mod also adds a harpoon, which is... it's literally just a retextured trident, as well as some diving leggings, which don't work. Honestly though, this mod isn't the most useless, and although the features are kinda dodgy, it still functions and like it has some purposes. C tier. So this was a pretty requested one after I covered Structures Arise in the last video. Let the Adventure Begin adds a bunch of new structures to the game. Now, although this mod isn't absolutely flawless, I'll get to that in a bit, it definitely enhances the Create mod experience as opposed to hindering it. The structures are a lot less overpowered than the ones in Structures Arise. They still occasionally provide the player with piles of materials, but it's done a lot more modestly. Most of the structures in this mod are pretty small and are mainly just kind of for bringing more life into your Minecraft world. However, it does have a handful that are pretty significant. First is this one named the Grot. Now, the first time I found one of these structures, it was really small and I kind of thought they would all be like that. But then, after going back and looking at a second one, I realized that this does in fact give the player a lot of loot and a lot to explore. It feels kind of similar to the trial chambers. There's also this big castle, which is really cool. The structures all look really amazing, and they have functioning Create mod contraptions on the inside. This was, in my opinion, a major downside to the other mod. If you're gonna make structures for the Create mod, not including contraptions definitely feels like a massive loss. Now, my main issue with this mod is that sometimes the structures can generate a little out of place. Sadly, I don't think this is something you can really ignore either, because it's not just like the terrain looks a bit unnatural or the colors are kind of out of place or something. I mean, this mod sometimes can completely take out chunks of your world and make it look like it was kind of just copy and pasted in. Other than that though, I would say this is a very solid mod. A great option if you want to have Create structures in your world. B tier. Create Hypertubes lets you create Hypertubes. God, how do I have an order? It's a pretty simple add-on that doesn't take itself too seriously, which I appreciate. The Hypertubes are very intuitive. I didn't even have to use the ponder feature. The entrances link together with these tubes, and the whole thing is powered with stress. I appreciate the fact that they're not restricted to one rotation and that the tubes can go both ways. like I said, this mod in my opinion isn't that serious, so it is nice to have less restrictions on what you can do with it. In my opinion, probably the best use case for this mod is getting around your factories. Having to power the tubes with stress means it's kind of awkward if you want to use them anywhere else. If you do however choose to go through the hassle of setting a system up, the limited range means you're gonna have to use these accelerators that also double up as connectors. The thing is, after stacking up a few of these things, you actually gain like a crazy amount of speed. Like, if you're willing to go through the massive pain of setting up a working system, it would actually be worth your time. I think using it underground would probably be your best bet. By far, the most underrated part of this add-on is its compatibility with the elytra. If you have one equipped, you'll automatically be spat out with it already being deployed. If you pair this with the accelerators, you get absolutely flown, and it's incredibly fun. I was originally going to give this a C tier due to its lack of application, but I think I've kind of convinced myself out of it. B tier. Create Propulsion is not as broad as some other add-ons. The VS mods I've covered so far open the gate to certain niches. Clockwork adds planes, Trackwork adds cars and tanks, and Above and Beyond adds spaceships. But this is the first one I'm covering that doesn't focus on one area and just adds a few items that synergize with moving vehicles and physics objects in general. Now, as a bit of a spoiler, I really do like this add-on, and since it doesn't really add that much, I'm gonna go over all of its features a little. Firstly, it adds sensors. There's a standard version and an upgraded version that has extended range and block filtering. This block will detect things in its way and send out a signal depending on how far away the block is. Obviously, the intended use for this thing is on a plane or a car, as it will update dynamically. This is a really cool addition because it bridges the gap between physics objects and the real world, giving a way to interact the two. This could be useful for like an altimeter or possibly for lining up an extraction point for a helicopter or something. This brings me to the next item. The redstone magnet. This block does exactly what you'd imagine it to do. It's a magnet that's toggleable through redstone and it works flawlessly. This would work so well with a helicopter, I'm just not talented enough to build one. This one also adds a lodestone tracker, which is essentially a placeable compass that emits a redstone signal to the dial of the compass and its own thruster and physics objects creating blocks. The thruster does require fuel and it's compatible with mods like The Factory Must Grow, however the mod also adds its own fuel type too, which I'm very thankful for as someone who just wanted to quickly check out the mod. I think I like this mod so much because it focuses on the creativity side of Valkyrian Skies. The items it adds give the player the potential to do so much, even though it might not initially seem like it. Having a redstone powered device like the lodestone tracker or sensor means you could hypothetically automate cars or even planes. Having a block like the magnet makes planes or cars actually useful for bulk transferring items. The greatest part of this add-on is it's actually not buggy, unlike every single other Valkyrian Skies add-on that exists. The items aren't dodgy and actually seem to all work flawlessly. The only thing keeping this mod out of the S tier is the fact that not enough good VS add-ons exist to give this mod a proper good purpose yet. A tier. This is like the type of mod I expect some random ass comment for. Like, I can't believe Tids forgot Create Ornithopter Glider, that's literally my favorite add-on. In my opinion, this mod is okay. If I was to suggest a change, I think I would completely rework its progression. This add-on adds a glider to the Create mod, which I initially thought would be like an underpowered early game elytra, which to be honest, I thought that was the case until I checked the crafting recipe and realized that it could be used with rockets. This item is essentially like a small upgrade to the elytra. It fits more with the Create mod theme, so for those of you who like the elytra in Create but don't like the texture, this could be a good add-on for you. It essentially acts in the same exact way, but it has a built-in boost that works similar to jumping on a horse. I actually think this is a pretty cool feature, and whilst in my opinion a little too strong for the other game, I think with some tweaks it could genuinely be a good feature. To make it balanced, I would nerf the boost by a lot, so you're barely able to stay in the air. This way you're also not able to take off from anywhere you want. It would require you to be on a cliff or something. Then I'd obviously remove rocket compatibility and make it not require the elytra. Personally, I don't really like using the elytra and rockets in the Create mod because in my opinion it takes a bit away from the fun of designing transport and such, which is a major part of the create mod experience. However, if something like what I'm describing was to exist, I think I'd be more open to using it, as it would be less overpowered. In the current state of the mod though, I don't really see a reason to use the glider other than simply liking the texture over the elytra. So I think I'm gonna have to give this a D tier. Sometimes when playing Minecraft, you really just don't want to deal with hostile mobs. If you find yourself in this position a lot, then Create Peaceful is for you. It adds essence for passive hostile and boss mobs and essentially allows you to get mob drops from these items instead of killing the mobs themselves. The drops are, in my opinion, pretty fair, keeping in mind that each passive mob drops a single animal essence, and then each monster and boss essence require 9 and 81 animal ones respectively. This is what I got from crushing a stack of monster essence, and here's 10 stacks of boss essence. I kind of get the appeal for this mod, to be honest. I feel like because the create mod reshapes how you play Minecraft so much, a lot of people probably don't want to have to deal with mobs. Plus, the whole model of the create mod and create mod add-ons is to make Minecraft more realistic, and you know, zombies and creepers don't exist in the real world, so. In my opinion though, this mod kinda has anti-synergy with the create mod, as you'll be missing out on a few features such as automating XP. Not to mention, playing on Peaceful completely voids the hunger system, which I mean makes Farmer's Delight basically completely useless, assuming you're playing with that. If you're not playing on Peaceful, passive mobs will still drop this essence, which kinda clogs your inventory and is pretty annoying. Basically what I'm saying is this mod is an instant S tier if you play exclusively on Peaceful, otherwise it's going straight in the C tier. Okay. This mod adds one single item, but my god, it might be the greatest item of all time. The most annoying thing in the create mod is when you have to extend your item belts. The easiest way of doing this is with encased chain drives, but doing this too much will make your machines look really big and clunky, and god forbid you want to make a turn. With create transmission, you're able to now do everything with one item. With the new transmission chain, you can connect your belts horizontally, diagonally, and vertically, which saves you so much time and crafting, as well as looking a lot more sleek. As an added bonus, you're also able to cover these blocks up with casings just like you can for belts themselves, and the textures look so cool. Honestly, if I played with this mod in survival, I would use these chains by themselves just for decoration. This quality of life add-on is genuinely so useful, and I wish it was included in a mod like Create Connected or something. B tier. I'm gonna get so much hate for that. This is actually a really fun idea. The mod definitely doesn't take itself that seriously at all, which can be interpreted as either a good or a bad thing, but personally I actually had a lot of fun experimenting with the teas. You might think they just give you different effects, but that's actually not the case, and finding out what each one of them do was pretty exciting. I would say it was actually similar vibe-wise to older Minecraft mods, something reminiscent of More TNT or Lucky Blocks mod or something like that. It was fun just going through them and checking out what each of them do. As for practicality, you can probably guess that most of the teas are pretty pointless. Like, most of these random effects don't help you at all in a survival setting, but I will say every now and then there's genuinely an effect that I could see coming in handy. To be honest, I think the main reason you would play this mod is because it's a bit of fun, and maybe I'm a little blinded by nostalgia, but I think it's actually alright. It gives me kind of the same energy as Create Estrogen. B tier. For all my cardboard connoisseurs out there, this mod is for you. To be honest, I was gonna absolutely dunk on this mod, but then it actually started to get a little better. It adds about 7 items in total, so I'm gonna go over each one. First, this cardboard snowball thing. It is an item that exists. It's like a snowball that does a very little bit of damage. I'm not sure what you'd use this for, but it's here. Cardboard shears that break when you use them. Honestly, I have no idea what these are for. This cardboard saddle. Honestly, this is not completely useless. It essentially just gives you a recipe for saddles with this as an intermediate. This pickaxe, which gives you speed when you hold it for some reason, and it never breaks. The trade-off is that it mines really slowly. The developer says you can use it for farms, and to their credit, it's a pretty good perk of having infinite durability. The issue is that it's so slow it would probably make you go insane. But from here on out, the mod actually becomes much more interesting. It adds cardboard elytra and rockets. Now, if you watch any of my videos, you're probably quite familiar with the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of the elytra in Create. I think it's a little too strong and it kind of ruins some of the fun. This mod actually found a cool balance to it. The cardboard elytra is very cheap and works like the regular elytra, with one massive downside. It breaks after you land. This means you're really only going to use it for special occasions, like getting a nice view of your build or flying down a cliff for fun, because the alternative is carrying a bunch of these in your inventory and swapping them out every time one breaks. This is actually a really unique way of balancing this item. The cardboard rockets essentially act like regular rockets, except they only work with the elytra and cannot be set off normally, which pairs nicely with the cardboard elytra because it means you won't accidentally click the ground or something. The next item is this cardboard totem of undying. It works similar to the regular totem but gives you different effects. I actually like this because it gives the player a choice for what effects you would like to have after you cheat death, either going with extra health from the regular totem or the added agility of the new totem. Finally, it adds this cardboard ingot, which when combined at an anvil with the cardboard sword, it increases the level of knockback. From testing, I'm pretty sure this can be scaled infinitely and the XP caps out at level 10, so you can go crazy. This is actually a pretty fun addition and gives you a proper reason to craft the cardboard sword, which is pretty cool. Obviously, this mod isn't the most amazing create add-on or anything, but I actually think it does pretty well with what it has in a pretty creative way. Still though, I really can't justify putting it that high. C tier. You can probably judge by the name that this is going to be another structure adding mod, and you'd be right. Create Structures Overhaul actually adds some pretty good structures. A lot of them honestly tick my boxes. They generate with fair and good loot, the structures themselves look good, and they don't spawn looking out of place, which is a problem with some other structure generating mods. It adds a lot of these copper structures, which are pretty cool. I personally like this greenhouse. I think the design is really cool and I like the interior. Oh, and some of them also have functional create mod contraptions, which is a really good addition. This mod does still, however, have a downside, unfortunately, that being the fact that the structures spawn really often. This is actually really annoying because other than this issue, this mod would have been great, and it's also such an easy fix. However, the spawn rates aren't something you can really ignore because they're kind of quite bad. Here I'm able to see 3 of these copper structures from one place in the air, and what's worse is that 2 of these structures are the same structure. It's actually pretty interesting because I'm still searching for the perfect create structure mod. All the mods I've reviewed so far have had at least one pretty major flaw. I guess the search continues. C tier. The creator was kind enough to provide a video for this mod, so let's watch it together. Okay, welcome to a very special episode of Tids Reacts. Okay. Dude, the 3D models look pretty cool, I can't even lie. Okay, so you can hit, project. Wait, that's actually pretty cool. The ender pearl is... That didn't look like it went very far, actually. Wait, is this even, like, better than just throwing it normally? I swear that looked like that went less distance than if you were to just regularly throw it. Oh, okay. Oh, maybe the tiers make it better. So if it's metal, it probably hits it a lot harder. Street lamps, okay. Oh, you can place them down. Wait. That's like, oh my god. You can put like a bunch of different lights in them. That's actually really cool. I like that. Oh, wait, that's actually really cool. I saw this in the mod and I was like, what could this possibly be for? Propeller leggings, reduce fall damage, and high jump. Is this just gonna give you jump boost? Oh, it's while shifting. Wait, so you can like choose when to toggle it? The super fishing rod description just says super, so consider me intrigued. Oh my god. Oh my god, okay. Most of this mod works pretty accurately to the video. The leggings are a little finicky at times. They work mostly, but sometimes you can take fall damage. I also like how you have to crouch to high jump. It means you're probably not going to accidentally trigger this unless you're like bridging or something. That would be kind of bad actually. There's also this weird feature with the syringe where for some reason the effects only apply to mobs that are hit with the sweeping edge and not the main attack. Also, there's this inconsistency for the boxing gloves where you have a lot more range in creative mode for some reason. I learned that the hard way. See ya. I think I'm missing something because I'm genuinely sitting here in disbelief that this add-on only has like 7,000 downloads. Create Missiles adds missiles into the game, but the way this is done is so cool and well integrated. It genuinely stands alongside the massive add-ons like Big Cannons and Enchantment Industry in my opinion. You have to set up the launch pad, which has 3 main components: the control center, the navigation, and the recipe for the missile itself. You then put these blueprints in here and load up the materials required to craft the missile. It then crafts it for you right in front of your eyes. Each missile also has 3 body parts, and the cool thing is you can mix and match. So you could have a really strong thruster and then like a really pathetic head if you wanted to. The navigation is also really cool. It works by using a Minecraft map where you have to manually click and set the location, which means you can pick exactly where your missile lands, and you can stay well away from the blast zone. Additionally, I think the way this mod handles the missile crafting is also really cool. Making use of these blueprints means you could hypothetically create your ideal missile, and then it would be really easy to automate the process, as all you need to do is to feed the materials into the arms. On top of that, this mod also gives you a bunch of options for really cool missile heads. They aren't necessarily all just explosives. My personal favorite has got to be this teleporter one that uses an ender pearl head to teleport you where the missile lands. This means you can essentially pick on a map where you want to be dropped and watch as the rocket delivers you there. I usually dislike mods that focus on military or weapons, but for this one it's so underrated and so well done, I feel like I have to give it an A tier. Shipped is a mod that adds a bunch of variants to existing building blocks, and I include it in almost every modded playthrough I do. It's such a good tool for texturing and gives you so many options. Create Shipped is literally just an extension for both mods that integrates the Create mod building blocks to Shipped. Now basically every build I do has a bunch of blocks from Shipped. It's a really easy and reliable way to make your builds look a lot nicer, and I will say this mod definitely does a good job at bringing that to the Create mod stones. My criticism for this mod, however, is the fact that I think it could do with a few more blocks. I appreciate that the developer has gone through and done all the Create mod stones, but it would have been really cool to see some variants on blocks like casings, or even functional blocks like shafts or pipes, or even fluid tanks. Sometimes building in Create can feel a bit monotonous because all of your contraptions look pretty similar, so having options like this would be so good. Maybe I'm setting my expectations too high though. I get what this mod is going for, I just think it misses the mark a little. See ya. Pneumatic equipment adds a bunch of new air-powered tools to the Create mod: a pickaxe, an axe, some armor, and an arrow launcher. It also adds vents, which now let you pump air into pipes. Also, you can use this thing that allows you to refill your back tank without taking it off. This is actually a pretty useful feature. The jetpack I use in my survival series relies on air like a back tank, so being able to fill it up without taking it off would actually be pretty amazing. I would say I kind of have a problem with every other aspect of this mod though. The armor pieces give you buffs, the boots let you fly, and the leggings give you speed and jump boost. The problem is you're not able to turn the rocket boots feature off, so you can't really jump normally, and additionally when you're off the ground, you lose your leggings buffs. This means your FOV is constantly changing because you're constantly getting and re-getting speed. The pickaxe and axe are technically faster than netherite, however they make this really annoying and off-putting sound when you use them, which makes them really hard to use. Finally, the arrow launcher is the only one that looked promising at the start. It's like a crossbow that you don't need to charge up, and it also lets you use tipped arrows, which is pretty cool. But then it crashed my game. That's when it stopped being pretty cool. Also, this was the strangest crash I've ever seen. Like, it somehow killed me in creative mode, but I wasn't able to press respawn, and then when I relogged and logged back into my world, my game crashed. So for forcing me to create a new world, I'm giving it a D tier. So, not gonna lie, when I first saw this add-on, I thought it was gonna work like the Extractinator from Terraria, where you put in some gravel and it would turn into some random bits or pieces, like maybe some iron ingots or some zinc nuggets or something like that. Turns out I was very wrong. Create Gravel Extractors adds these extractors that allow you to straight up turn gravel into a bunch of ores and other materials. This obviously causes major progression problems. That's the main problem with this mod, but there are also a bunch of others. Firstly, it's a create add-on technically, but the gravel extractors don't actually require any rotational force or anything to use. You can still use conveyor belts with them, but they're kind of gimmicky. However, using them by hand is not much easier either, because you can only convert one piece of gravel at a time, so it becomes like this really weird mouse flicking game. If you use one of the upgraders, you can increase this to 2, but like that almost, in my opinion, makes things worse, because it means that this annoying ass menu navigation was actually an intended feature. I'm also personally not the biggest fan of some textures, and the recipes in this mod seem a little unnatural. Like, you can craft the number 1. Some ores like the diamond and netherite generators give you nuggets instead of the ores itself, as I assume a balancing feature. But this also makes no sense, because A, it doesn't really make it that much less overpowered, and B, it's like really inconsistent. Like, for some reason you need 81 nuggets to craft 1 diamond, but it only takes 5 to craft 1 netherite. I mean, I guess the ancient debris needs to be crafted into netherite ingots, but still. If I was to balance this mod, I think I'd make the extractors have a chance at producing their respective materials instead of just spitting one out every single time, and also make them require some stress. This one might have to go in the D tier. I can't believe under 1,000 people have seen this masterpiece. Create Pibblefied adds a little pug to your game. He doesn't actually do that much, but he's cool, he can hang. He's also got different variants too, like you can make a big Pibble, and you can also make a Pibble with an M16. Just the usual. In order to craft Pibblefied, you need to actually assemble his organs, and then you'll be rewarded with the Pibble item, which squeaks when you click him. After combining him with a capsule, you're now able to release his true potential. This item is actually technically post Ender Dragon because it requires this new ore, which is allegedly found in the end, although I couldn't find it. No need to worry though, because the mod accounts for this and actually gives you a recipe with endstone. I tried making the Pibbles fight the Ender Dragon, but they didn't really do anything. I think this mod fits perfectly in the Pibblefied tier.